Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Genealogy Collective. Our collective comprises 6 North Shore libraries: Bayville, Glen Cove, Gold Coast, Locust Valley, Manhasset, and Oyster Bay. Together, we offer monthly genealogy programs. Tonight's program, A Guide to the Daughters of the American Revolution Library, is sponsored by the Manhasset Public Library, and our presenter is Olivia Malunzi. Olivia is the reference librarian at the Daughters of the American Revolution Library. She holds a BA in History and Museum Studies with a French minor from Juniata College and an MLIS focusing in diversity and inclusion from the University of Maryland's iSchool. Before coming to the DAR, Olivia worked at the Middletown Valley Historical Society, Heritage Frederick, formerly the Historical Society of Frederick County, Schifferstad Architectural Museum, which is part of the Frederick County Landmarks Foundation, the National Park Service, and the National Anthropological Archives at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. She began working at the DAR as a staff genealogist in June 2019, and in 2022, she became the reference librarian for the DAR Library. Olivia lives in Frederick, Maryland, with a cat and an unconscionably large number of books. Before Olivia takes over, I just want to say we're going to hold all questions till the end. Please type your questions in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the program. Olivia, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Let me share my screen real fast, if it'll let me. Oh, it says that it's disabled because I'm only a participant. I don't know if there's a way to give me permission, but
Okay.
I can patter for a minute.
Okay, hold on a second.
So as we said, my name's Olivia Malunzi. I'm the reference librarian at the DAR Library. There's only about 10 of us on staff there, so I am kind of a one-woman show for reference. And tonight we're going to be talking about how you can use our library both on-site and remotely.
I don't know why I'm up there. Let's see here. What's happening? Lydia, are you out there?
Oh, there we go. It's letting me.
Okay, good.
All right, there we go. So welcome. I have put my work email here, the omalunzi@dar.org. Feel free to email me any questions you guys come up with either tonight or later. This is my whole gig is helping people do research. So please don't think you're bugging me. I've also put our shared reference inbox, Ask the Library at dar.org. If I'm ever out of the office, that's the one that will have multiple librarians looking in on it. So sometimes you'll get a faster response there. So I like to begin by kind of going over our history. The DAR itself was founded in 1890, and the library was founded 6 years later in 1896. And this was originally to help our staff genealogists verify applications. So it was 126 books we opened with, and they were all focused on Revolutionary War service and genealogy. So it was a very tight collection. In 1900, we realized that we had a good resource, and so we opened to members of the DAR and then members of the public who could come in and do research in our library. And at this point, we actually opened up a public space. Previously, we were just kind of in people's houses, but then we moved to a rented room on F Street. We've moved around a lot. In 1910, we moved onto what is now the DAR's city block at 1776 D Street in Washington, D.C. We were originally in the north side of Continental Hall, which if you've been to the DAR at all, that is the first floor genealogy office. It's pretty much a big ballroom looking thing. And we had at that point 5,000 books. So we went a little bit gangbusters in those 4 years. In 1928, the fire marshal said that the DAR was too big for Continental Hall, which was our original meeting space. And so we built Constitution Hall at the other end of the block. And that took about a year. And then in 1929, we were actually moved upstairs in Constitution Hall, and that was 18,000 books. So they had to carry all those to the other end of the block. And then inevitably, they had to carry them all back because in 1949 we moved into the former Memorial Continental Hall. That's a picture of us now. You can see we still have the boxes from when we used to be a theater and a meeting space. And then in 1966, we opened our Science Technology Center, which started out as a big room full of microfilm readers and Scantron machines and things like that, and now is our computer lab. So we've done a lot of growth over the years, but our mission has really stayed the same to help our staff genealogists and then to help people do their own genealogy research. Our historic space, we are on the National Registry of Historic Landmarks, and it's not for anything that the DAR did. In 1921, the hall hosted the International Conference on Naval Limitation. This was after World War I. There was a lot of new technology, especially naval technology. And so different countries got together and they were figuring out, who's allowed to have this many ships? What are the rules with submarines? Things like that. Are you allowed to use chemical weapons on boats when people can't run away? Things like that. So this limited the naval arms races. It sorted out who was in charge of what islands in the Pacific, and this is the first time that China is recognized as a sovereign nation internationally. In 1935, we got that National Historic Landmark designation, and a year after that, the treaty actually expired when they tried to renegotiate and it didn't work out. So that's led directly to World War II, but that's kind of our secret moment in history. All right. I'm going to talk about broadly our collections, and then I'm going to go into how you can access those. So we have about 250,000 books covering all 4 centuries of U.S. history. We started out with a very tight Revolutionary War focus, but now we've really expanded to cover all of U.S. history, from first contact and first settlement to I think the most recent one is we have a book on Iraq War veterans. So we're getting up there to modern day. We have about 148,000 discrete titles, and 35,000 of those are family histories and genealogies. And a lot of those are unique. I like to joke that we're everyone's weird cousin. A lot of people will self-publish a genealogy for their family, and they'll maybe make 1 or 2 extra copies, and they'll give one of them to us. So we're kind of secretly related to everyone's family in that way. We have 10,000 research files. A lot of these are Bible records, family studies, research notes, things like that people kind of self-collected and then donated to us. And those are sorted into family files by last name or geographic files by location. So you can search either way. We have thousands of manuscript items, and our current manuscript librarian is doing a fantastic job of getting some new finding aids up and ready to go for that. And we also have special collections in African American, Native American, and women's history and genealogy. So we do focus strongly in those subject areas. Our digital collections encompass all of the verified applications of DAR members. And as of October, that was about 1,047,000 women had joined the DAR across time. So we have all their applications. We have most of the surviving documentation files for applications. There was a period of time where we mailed everything back to people. So we obviously don't have those files because we didn't have anything to scan. So that's something to look out for. But if it survives, we do have those documentation files. We have 20,000 print volumes of GRC reports, and we'll talk about what that stands for in a minute. We also have an indexing project of Revolutionary War pensions that was started before the National Archives was doing their indexing and is ongoing today as we continue to try and refine it and get everyone's names. And then we also have an index of Patriots records, which is an effort to try and collect unpublished, unknown sources for Revolutionary War service to try and identify additional Revolutionary War patriots. And right now they're doing a lot of work trying to collect resources from Cuba and other Spanish American areas where the Spanish Navy especially was active because Spain was an ally of ours. So if you have someone who served in the Spanish Army, that counts as DAR service. So the GRC is really cool. This is the Genealogical Records Committee. And this was started almost immediately when the DAR opened up. And it was an effort, and I should say is an effort, it's not like it has ended, to have women go out and collect previously unpublished records. The DAR recognized that they had women all over the country, all over the world. And so this was a great moment for them to go and get local probate and court and land records, do transcriptions of them, send them to National, and National would publish them. So this has Bible records, cemetery transcriptions, family genealogies, lineages, vital records, Revolutionary War service records. And the really cool thing about these is because we've been doing them for about 130 years, sometimes we have records that have since been destroyed. It's happened a couple times where, for instance, there was a courthouse in Georgia that had a lightning strike and burned down. And previously, the Genealogical Records Committee had gone in and copied out all of their probate records. And we were actually able to print those back off and send them back to the county because they had lost all of their probate records in that fire. So a lot of times this is a little bit of a Hail Mary pass, but it does end up helping you find some kind of unknown treasures that might not have made it into a traditional library or online database yet. Our manuscript collection is comprised of 2,500 collections. It takes up about 800 linear feet. Usually these are research notes, correspondence, everything up to basically an unpublished book that didn't quite make it to the bindery. And one of the things we started doing way before my time was binding these as books in the library. Basically, if we could tell that somebody had been ready to send this off for publication, but they didn't quite get there and they passed away or something, we just, did the extra 5% at the end and bound the book for them, and it's in our library as a book. So this brings me to a question I get asked a lot, which is my relative gave something to the DAR. Where is it? Do you have it? And I have a couple qualifying questions for that. I will absolutely try and look for it, but DAR is kind of a vast term that a lot of people can use loosely. So I usually ask, was it us DAR or was it like the local chapter of your DAR? Because that changes where it ends up, obviously. Was this sent in as part of an application or was it sent in on its own as a manuscript? Because as I said, we don't have all of the application documentation, especially from the early days. So some of that we don't have anymore because it was sent back. And then was it sent to the library or was it sent to the archives? So the archives is run by the Office of the Historian General. This is unimportant if you're not into DAR gobbledygook, but basically the library collects records and manuscripts that are about being a person, and the Historian General's office collects records about being a DAR person. So they're specifically focusing on doing records of chapters, national activities, things like that. So sometimes if it's a history that is very much about the chapter, it will end up over there instead of with us. I accidentally went backwards there. We also have several special collections. So we have an ephemera collection. Ephemera, if you don't know, is kind of all of the little things of history that were never supposed to make it. They were supposed to just be transitory, things like tickets, playbills, newspaper articles, things like that. So they are collected by most genealogy societies because they actually have a lot of important information on them. And members in the public donated loose pamphlets and all sorts of stuff to us. A lot of this collection was later put into our family and geographic files. So sometimes you will see a reference, especially if it's an older family history, to the DAR ephemera collection. And you'll start searching in our catalog or you'll start searching online and you won't be able to find the ephemera collection. And some people freak out then because they think that we've destroyed it and like culled everything out. We haven't, we just shifted it a little bit to the left. Some of the larger stuff was recatalogued as books because if it was like an 100-page pamphlet, we were like, yeah, that's a book. So this exists, it's just changed its location. So it's a little bit of a hike, but we do still have those. We also have a WPA collection of Work Progress Administration books. The Works Progress Administration was a project put up by FDR during the Great Depression to try and get people going to work. And one of the main things they were doing was a historical records survey. And they were going into every county repository they could find in all the states, and they were just writing down what these county courthouses had in terms of vital records, in terms of genealogy, stuff like that. It was really just an effort to kind of see baseline where we were. And these were co-funded by the state governments. DC, as you may know, has a very complicated history with its government. And so there was not really a state organization to sponsor the WPA work in DC. So the DAR sponsored that work and funded it from 1935 to 1942. And as a result, we ended up being the WPA repository for DC. So we ended up with their set of inventory of county archives books. Total, it's about 1,200 volumes of historical records survey material, about 2,500 volumes total of WPA works. And separate from that, just kind of mixed in, people have also been donating WPA books to us over time. We have a lot of transcripts done by the WPA of other records, and we are particularly strong in Michigan, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Why, I can't tell you, but those seem to be the states we ended up with a lot of records for. So if you're looking for WPA books, we can be a resource for that as well. We also have the National Huguenot Society collection. So in 2002, the Huguenot Society was closing their, at the time, central headquarters, and they needed a place to put their library. And so they deposited their library with us. It was about 500 volumes, and it is maintained today as the National Huguenot Society collection. So we haven't taken anything out of it. Nothing's been added. It's kind of in stasis from 2002. But this is a really good resource for Protestant refugees from France. If you've got French relatives, Protestant relatives that you think might have been part of the Huguenot diaspora, I do recommend you cross-reference this with our own collections on France and Protestants, because not all of our stuff is from the Huguenot Society. We've been doing our own collecting. And if you're not sure if your family is related to a Huguenot line, the NHS does maintain a database of DAR patriots that are also in Huguenot lineages, and that's their main website there. If you go there, it's a pretty prominent button at the top of their page, and so you can kind of double check if you know you have a Revolutionary War guy and see if you can go back even further to this society. All right, we're going to start off with visiting in person. We are open Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4, and Saturday, 9 to 5. We are closed on all federal holidays. In most things, we follow the federal government. So weather closures, things like that, we follow the federal government. We do not follow the federal government, however, if there is a government shutdown. We are privately funded, so we will still be open if there is ever a government shutdown. We are closed 1 week in June for our annual meeting, which is called the Continental Congress, because it had to be. We're the DAR. In 2023, this was June 28th to July 2nd. It's usually around the last week of June, going into the 4th of July. We are also closed on 3 floating holidays that are chosen by our executive committee, and these are usually around Christmas or New Year's to kind of try and make a long weekend make sense, so that we're not coming in for like 1 day and then off for 3. Pardon me. And if there is ever an unexpected closure, we will announce that on the website and on our Facebook page. So that's a good place to get the most up-to-date information. Getting here, we are at 1776 D Street Northwest. Usually you can street park on C or D Street. You can see here in the map on the right, we are in red with the number 1. Number 2 just above us is the National Red Cross headquarters. Just below us, number 4 is the Organization of American States. We are right next to the White House and the ellipse, so things could get interesting. You can metro in, that's sometimes much easier because there are parking garages up 17th and 18th Street, but they're further north. And so parking can be a little bit scarce depending on other events going on in the area. We are accessible by Farragut North or Farragut West metro stops, and that's basically everything except the green line and the yellow line. We are within the White House red zone. And for those of you who aren't from DC, you might not know what that means, but I have a map of it here. Basically, anytime that there is a big event or there's, an election, anything like that, there's a march, there's something happening at the White House, the Secret Service closes what they call the red zone, which is shown here. It's the solid line. And you can see we are the yellow star just to the side of the White House. And so since we are within the red zone, if the Secret Service closes that, it becomes very hard to get to us. So a lot of times we will close because the staff can't get to work, which means that visitors can't get to work. For instance, right now they are getting ready for the National Christmas Tree lighting on Thursday night. And so Thursday afternoon, the red zone is going to be like put into place sometime around 1 p.m. So they're going to, close all these streets. Sometimes if it's really busy, they close this orange zone as well. But really the red zone is the problem to look for. So if you ever see that like something big is happening in DC, you might want to call and see if we're open because sometimes we're closed unexpectedly. We are free to come in. Anyone can come in and visit the library. You don't have to be a DAR member. You don't have to be trying to join the DAR. You can just be doing your own research. You could just want to see what we're all about. There was a point in time where we used to charge admission to non-DAR members, but we've stopped that policy. So some people are still operating under the former policy, but that has ended. All of our copies and printing are 50 cents per page because, as I said, we are not funded by anyone except ourselves, so paper's gotten very expensive, as I'm sure some of you are aware. If you're printing a record copy of an application, so that is the paper that has all of the marks from the genealogist who's gone through and looked at all the sources and verified all the information, those are $10 each. And that's because those are often used, for instance, as part of an SAR application, since it is verified by us. And then a lot of times the more economical way to go is to get our photo pass, which is for a day, it's $20, and you can use your phone or your camera and you can take all the pictures you want of manuscripts, books, everything like that, except the computer screens because of copyright issues. And one of the things that throws people a lot is our collection is arranged by call words. So we don't use the Dewey Decimal System. We don't use the Library of Congress system. All you have to know is the alphabet, and everything will fall in line alphabetically. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. But first, I want to talk about our remote research capabilities. So even if you can't come visit us in person, there's still stuff you can do from home where we can help you out with research. And you're always going to want to start from www.dar.org/library. If you get lost, just go back to that homepage. Our website is vast and it's circular and it's confusing sometimes. I get lost some days. So don't feel bad if you have to kind of just go back to the top and go back into the system. But when you go to that homepage, this is what you're going to see. And as you can see, I have highlighted in yellow and circled in yellow. We really do not bury the lead on how to get to the library catalog. Every time I think I can't put it somewhere, I find another place to throw it in because people are still like, how can I get to the catalog? And I've tried to put it as many places as I can. As I said, we don't use Dewey Decimal or Library of Congress classifications. We use call word classifications. And that's because we have a very specialized collection. So if we were using those numerical systems, we would have to go out to like the 5th or 6th decimal place just to differentiate between books. And nobody wants that. We don't want to have to type that all out. You don't want to have to be searching in it. So we've just gone with call words. Our catalog will automatically search across everything that I've previously mentioned. So it will search across the library, it will search across the manuscripts, it will search across the GRC books. All of that will be in one unified search. And then if we've digitized a collection already, or if we found a copy of the work online, there will be a link within the catalog record. And many of those links work even if you're not in our building. Some of them are IP protected, you do have to be on site, but a lot of them you can view from anywhere. So even if you're not gonna come visit us in person, I encourage you to do a quick search on our catalog because you might find a digital version of the book you've been looking for. And this is just an example entry from our library catalog. This is a program from the dedication of the statue of Brevet Major General William Wells and the officers and men of the 1st Regiment of Vermont Cavalry. And you can see immediately under that title, it says available at the DAR library, main library. And then there's those gobbledygook words in uppercase in the parentheses. And this is what is actually on the spine of the book. This is our call word classification. And once you know what's happening, it's fairly easy to kind of figure out where you need to go. So for instance, the first line is Vermont, because this is a Vermont book. It's then Vermont military, because it's about a military unit in Vermont. 1861 to 65 because it's about a Civil War unit from Vermont. Then cavalry because it's about a cavalry unit, and then the 1st Regiment. So if you read it backwards, this is a book about the 1st Regiment of Cavalry from the Civil War in the military of the state of Vermont. So if you went and you looked at this on the shelf, you would see all of the other Vermont military books from the Civil War would be right next to this guy. So you can kind of find one shelf and look at all the books from a county or look at all the books from a time period. And then if you look further down, it says available online. And if you scroll down at the bottom of this image, we have view full text that I've highlighted in yellow. And if you click on that, it actually goes to a scan of this on the Internet Archive. So you can access this from anywhere. So if you have someone who was in the 1st Vermont Cavalry, this might be something you're really interested in, but you don't have to come to us to get it. You can view this digitally. A couple quick search tips for our catalog because it can be ornery. Write out the states. Don't use postal abbreviations because, for instance, if you try and do NY, New York, you'll get everything that ends in NY, and that's not remotely what you probably want. I suggest, though, for counties, you just type in CO. So, for instance, Frederick CO. Don't write out the word county because some titles don't write out county. They just use CO. And so this way you'll get results for the items that use the abbreviation and items that use the full word county in the title. I recommend checking a couple last name spellings because when we catalog, we use the one that is used by the author for the family history. We don't quibble with them on what their last name is. So for example, if you look at bachelor with a T in our catalog, you'll get about 5 books. If you look at bachelor without a T, you'll get 2 books, and none of those overlap. So there are 7 total books, but you kind of have to look in 2 places to get them. One of my questions I ask a lot is, how do you think it should be spelled? And then what are all the ways you've seen people mess it up? And if you don't think there's another way to mess up your name, I recommend finding a school-age child in your life and asking them all the ways their name has been mispronounced or misspelled this year. Because trust me, they will have a weird one that you have not heard. We also have periods of history that are searchable as subjects, especially if it is a war. Oh, pardon me. So, for example, 1783 to 1812 is searchable because it's in between wars. It's between the end of the Revolutionary War, the beginning of the War of 1812. Similarly, the Spanish-American War is searchable as a term. So if you're just looking for general information or if you're trying to find a unit history, that can also be helpful to do a very broad search. One of the next things I want to highlight is our research guides. These can also be helpful even if you can't come visit us in person. We have a lot of research guides on how to use the DAR library, how to use the GRS. So that's helpful if you're trying to use DAR specific resources. But we also have service guides for every single state and every single country that was involved in the Revolutionary War. So if you're trying to find service for your Revolutionary War guy, if you're trying to find more information about them, this can help you. And we have how to find these resources both in our library and out in the wild as well. We also have research guides for patriots by nationality or ethnic groups. So for instance, we have a French research guide to finding French patriots. We have a Jewish research guide. We have African American, Spanish, and Native American guides. And the forthcoming one is a Dutch research guide because we just added that working group. We also have a guide on how to cite DAR sources. So if you're ever writing anything, if you're ever publishing your own genealogy and you need to cite an application or something, we have style guides for all of that because it can be kind of daunting to try and figure out who the author for everything is, especially when you get down into our alphabet soup. We have research guides for our collections. So these are finding aids for the largest manuscript collections by linear foot. It's not necessarily the ones that are the most helpful. Sometimes we have very large collections that are made up of one person's research notes. We have the Forgotten Patriots Research Guide. This was a guide published originally in 2003 to try and list all African American and Native American patriots involved in the Revolutionary War. Not really to do their genealogies, just to kind of take roll and try and find everyone's names. So since 2003, we've continued this effort, and so this links to our new online database. So there is a book called Forgotten Patriots out there, but it has been kind of subsumed by this database, which has the most up-to-date information as the genealogy department establishes more of these guys' lineages. We also have subject pathfinders. Some examples, if you're doing loyalist research, we've got a guide for that. Suffragist research, research on Scottish lineages, because Outlander hit us hard as it did many other libraries with people doing Scottish research, and then a research guide for African American lineages. All right, so the next big chunk we need to talk about is our online research system, which is highlighted here in yellow at the bottom. And this takes you to something called the GRS, or Genealogical Research System. A lot of times when people think of our online databases, this is the only thing they think of, which is okay. It's a big chunk of it. So you'll be taken to this page, and then you have at the top 7 tabs that can take you to different areas. We're going to focus on the first 3, which is ancestor, member, and descendants. GRC and Bibles, we're going to kind of skip because those results both show up in a normal catalog search. So if you're trying to really be specific or find a specific book, it's great to be able to drill down in those, but essentially that search will be performed if you do a catalog search. So we're going to skip those tonight. So the Ancestor tab is how you can search for every Revolutionary War patriot. So you can search a last name, it'll pull him up or her up, and you can see a basic rundown of their information. Member, you can search for a member of the DAR. If you are remote, you have to know their national number. You can't do a name search. But descendants is a listing of every single person who appears on DAR applications from the member all the way back to their Revolutionary War patriot. And so a lot of times you can do a broad name search in descendants and get close enough to find the person who you're looking for's national number. So our Revolutionary War tab, or the Rev War tab, is home to the Patriot Records Project, which I mentioned earlier. That's the effort to try and collect as many Revolutionary War records as possible. It's also called the PRP. We have our pension index for Revolutionary War gentlemen, where we have cross-referenced every single name we can find. And then we have our Patriots of Color database. This is the database that has taken over for the Forgotten Patriots book. If you are in the building, you can also see our state source guides and our American Women in the Revolutionary War research guide. These are also published volumes that are available in a lot of genealogy libraries. And then our resources tab changes if you're at home or if you're in the building. There's more access if you're in the building. But at home, you can still access the Analytical Card Index, which is a scan that we did of all of our card catalog cards up until the 1970s. We also have our WPA books collection, so you can view all of those. You're not going to be able to print them from home, but a lot of times viewing it is what you really need, especially to find out if it's relevant to your research. We also have our magazine archive that you can access, and then our recommended websites, which are kind of general research places we know about, and then some are sorted out by a specific topic or group to help you jumpstart your research. This is what the WPA page will look like. If you click on a book, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little print icon with the no symbol over it, and that's how you know that you can't print something. So usually you can view it, but you're not going to be able to print it. If this is gone, go wild, print all you want. Pardon me. So why should I care about the card catalog? Surely everything is in our modern catalog online. The reason I like our analytical card catalog is because of that word analytical. And so what that means is they didn't just write down all the titles, they cross-referenced the indexes of all of the books that are inside. So a lot of times you'll be able to find additional information that you might not be able to find with a traditional catalog search. So for instance, if you go into our normal catalog today online and you look for Jewett, you're going to get a single probate record in a single GRC book. Or you're going to get a bunch of stuff where someone named Jewett wrote the book, but it's not really about their family. And so you might walk away thinking we don't have anything on the Jewett family in our library. That's not true. So I did a search on the Jewett family in our analytical card catalog, and I found many index cards, but I've shown 3 here, all about the Jewett family. So on the left, you have the Jewett family appearing in a Who's Who Among South Dakotans book. You have in the middle the Jewett family appearing in a history of Addison County, Vermont. And then on the right, you have the Jewett family appearing in a history of Waterton. So I looked, and all 3 of those books are still in our catalog. They're still in our library. We still hold them. So I recommend doing this, especially if you've kind of been playing around with the catalog, you can't find anything. Toss a search into the analytical card catalog because you might find something that's been cross-referenced from within a book. If you are in the library, you will be able to access our website subscriptions. So we have most of the standard fare, Ancestry, Find My Past, JSTOR, things like that. Our draw is that we are also an affiliate library for the Family Search sites, and so we have an increased access. The only things you're not going to be able to see in our library are things that you actually have to go to a Family Search center to see. If you are in the library, you can also print WPA pages, and you can view and print file case materials. So I have an image at the bottom of some of the things that we digitized out of our manuscript collections and our vertical files. So for instance, we've got on the left, the Biscoe and Wright families of Virginia. That's somebody's research they did. We also have proof of ancestry for Emily N. Wright. That is, it looks like a documentation file that got resent in as an archival item. On the right, we have a newsletter from the South Street Seaport Museum. We have a run of that, so if you're looking for that. And then we also have a pamphlet from the centennial celebration of the evacuation of New York City after the Revolutionary War. So all sorts of stuff in our collection. All right, so real quick, before we open it up to the floor, I'm going to cover some of the kind of basic frequently asked questions I get, which might thin out the pack a little bit. Can I see my relatives' records? Sure, yeah, absolutely. You can see all of these for free from our library computers. There is a couple notes to know. Some information is still visible while you're researching remotely. So for instance, the first 3 generations of an application are restricted because we can assume that those people probably still alive because it's you, your parents, and your grandparents, or very recently deceased. But you can see everyone after that. There may not be documentation on file for every single patriot. Sometimes people, sent in one application, sent in a bunch of paperwork. They did a supplemental, which is their second application, and they didn't need to send in any paperwork because it was that person's son or something. So not every patriot has a documentation file. You can always request record copies. You can always request copies of this documentation. And there's instructions on how to do all that in the GRS, but you can also email us and we can help you out. Note that this is for personal research. If you're going to publish something or if you're going to try and, use this in a book or anything, that's a whole separate process. And I hate having to call people out on doing that. So please just email us and we'll discuss that. I should also mention that if a record is less than 100 years old, it is restricted and no one's going to be able to see it. No one's going to be able to access it, even if you're the person who sent it in. So for instance, if you are looking for a copy of your own birth certificate, and for some reason you sent your original birth certificate to the DAR, I can't give it back to you. We pinky swore when we took in your documentation, when genealogy took it in, that we weren't going to share your birth certificate with anyone, and that includes you. So please don't send us your originals. Please send copies of stuff. So does the GRS have every Revolutionary War guy? No, this is only patriots whose descendants have joined the DAR. So we know that there are some Revolutionary War soldiers, service people out there that we just don't have an entry for yet because none of their descendants have joined. The database is updated every single day, though, as genealogists are verifying applications and supplementals. So if you haven't checked the system in a while, I do recommend you do kind of an annual sweep, see if your person has shown up. Is there a list of everybody who served in the Revolution? No. Um, for a couple different reasons. One is that records varied by state, so there's not really a complete record of every single person who served in the American Revolution. Different states had different record policies, they had different record retention policies, so sometimes you've lost records or sometimes they never existed. And also, not everybody was recorded. Sometimes you have a guy who joins up for 2 days, marches with a unit, leaves them, never really ends up on a roll. Um, you have all sorts of people that are just listed as, you know, Jim's man, and it's an enslaved individual who was with Jim in this unit, but we don't know their name. So we do have lists of soldiers and sailors by colony or state or nation, and so we can help you do some research for lists, but there's not going to be like a comprehensive list. So if you're not finding your guy, don't feel bad. We can keep looking, but just because they don't show up in one list doesn't mean they're not real. Is everything in the DAR library okay to use in an application? Probably not. We collect based on a collections development policy. We don't collect based on relevance or acceptability for applications. Similarly, the genealogists and registrar general don't just take something because it's in the library. But I really believe in using all the materials to do research to find clues, even if they aren't acceptable for an application. So for instance, I have a story that was passed down in my family from my grandmother. She swore up, down, and sideways that her Civil War guy was in Andersonville for the entire Civil War. And I said, Grandma, the main problem with that is that Andersonville was not established until the end of the war in 1864. So I said, okay, where was this guy for the 3 years before that? And so I did some research, and it turns out what happened was he was a tuba player in a regimental band. He served for about 2 months. And then they realized, oh, this is probably a real war. We probably don't need a tuba player. We probably don't need a full marching band. And so they sent him home because he worked on the railroad. And so he was more valuable as a civilian working on the railroad than he was giving him a gun. And so what my grandma's story really was about was he serves in the war for 2 months and then we've lost him. We don't know where he went. But then we know he survives the war because he shows back up and starts having kids. So my grandma went to the most fanciful solution, which was that he was in Andersonville for the rest of the war, but she wasn't wrong. He did just disappear from the army one day, but there was a different reason. So again, every kind of wild story has a kernel of something in the middle. And so I really believe in kind of chasing that down and trying to get to the root of that family legend or that family history. And once again, those are our email addresses. And happy researching and good luck.
Thank you so much, Olivia. That was very interesting. A lot of information, a little overwhelming, but a
Yeah,
lot of
it's a lot.
information. You
That's
know,
why I always end with my email. I'm like, it's okay if you remember none of that. Always call me.
I mean, there's certainly a lot to find there, and even online. I mean, I myself have not been on the site, but it's definitely something I want to explore just before somebody needs something, just to check it out and see what's what, because there's so many different links you can click on or anything. Does anybody have any questions? If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask the question if you'd like. Um, how did you get involved with DAR as opposed to, I mean, obviously I read your biography, but but like what made you want to do this?
So I started out, I had a lot of different jobs that I was stringing together to make one full-time job, which, as you can kind of tell by my biography, I was a lot of different places. And a lot of it was, I'm here 2 days, I'm here one day, I'm in grad school, I'm stringing something together. And so I was like, I need to find a grown-up job. It's 5 days a week. And I originally started in genealogy because I enjoyed in the County Historical Society helping people do their research, but then kind of where their application process started, my involvement ended. And so I never kind of got to see it through to the end. So I was like, I want to work on that end of it and actually kind of get people in, because that feels like it would be good. And then after COVID, their library asked me they needed a new reference librarian, and the library staff um, said, "Hey, this is a job announcement. We're announcing it internally." And at that point, I figured that I had kind of learned about as much as I could from the genealogy office, and I wanted to go out and use those skills to help other people do their research. Um, because I love the genealogy office. I love that work, but one of the things is the genealogy office and the DAR is not as much focused on research, it's focused on verification of papers. So it's a lot of you checking someone else's work, and then
Okay.
if there's a problem, kind of telling them, hey, I think there's something hinky here. Can you go look at this again? And now I'm on the end where I get to look at it and go, okay, yeah, this is weird. Let's go solve that. And so I get to solve mysteries all day, which is everything I've wanted since I watched Scooby-Doo as a kid. So
I do have a question. One of the viewers is asking if you see that an ancestor is in the records,
mhm.
will it tell you who put the information in originally?
So if you are okay. So if you're at home, it'll tell you the national number, the person who did the original application. If you want to like find out their name and all their gossip, you have to either order the record copy or be in the building to look at that original person. Now, I will say the first person who established that patriot is not always the person who put all the information in. So, for instance, um, one example I have is actually someone we shut down, George Washington, because he never had biological children, so we had to shut him down. Um, which means we closed the line because you have to have a biological line. There was a time where we took collaterals, so it was like people's great nephews, and then that was too much. But for instance, George Washington, until about 5 years ago, did not have Mount Vernon as his place of death. It just said the county and the state. And then finally, we got around to fixing it for something, and we were like, hey, let's throw in that he died at Mount Vernon. So sometimes, especially if you're trying to hunt down like exactly where something that you disagree with came from, it's a hunt to find exactly which person did that, because all of our applications work cumulatively, so they build on each other. So you could have someone who's like, yeah, he was died in Virginia, and then someone later goes, he died in this county, and then someone later goes, he died in at Mount Vernon. So you can add stuff.
How many people do you that actually, come to the actual library? I mean, are there regulars or do you
Mhm.
have a lot of traffic there, or is it mostly through snail
Yeah,
mail or remote or
it kind of depends on the week. I will say we're starting to slow down because we're getting into winter, and a lot of people don't travel to see us. A lot of spring is our busiest because that's when a lot of genealogy conferences are. Um, so if you're ever looking to bring a group, I don't recommend coming like April to June because it's just going to be pandemonium. Um, so there are days where we don't have anyone come in, and there are days like Congress where we have literally 1,000 women come through.
wow.
It's absolutely wild how variable it is. We do have regulars. Weirdly, a lot of our regulars are not doing genealogy research. There's a gentleman right now who is on a quest to do a history of a specific plantation in the area. So he's been coming to us because we have a large African American collection. There's a professor who's on sabbatical. He's been coming to us because we're quiet, and also he needs a lot of early Virginia stuff. We're very close to GW, so during finals, a lot of kids will come study in our library because the campus libraries are all kind of crowded. Um, there's another lady who's working on the history of like some historic buildings or architect in DC, and we have some stuff on that. So it's also really wild to me how many different projects people are working on. It's not just people trying to, find out where their grandpa was born. We can handle that too, but we kind of get a little bit of everything.
And how many people actually staff the, reference desk at a time?
So there's one person at a time out there. We can call for help. we need it obviously, but usually there's one of us, we work hour-long shifts and then we switch, and there's 10 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's 11 people total in the library. 10 of them do desk shifts. The director of the library is obviously running around doing 5 million things, so she doesn't have time. She doesn't get to do desk shifts, but right now we are 8 people because we're missing 1 or 2 positions, so there's not a lot of us. We're small but mighty. But that also means we all know each other. So if you ever are like, I was in here 2 weeks ago, and we'll be like, oh yeah, you're Stacy, you're working on this. So that can be creepy to some people.
Um, if anybody would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, you can do so. Anybody out there? Don't see anybody with questions. See, I guess you were right. I guess all your information answered people's questions, like you said.
I hope. I keep tweaking it. Keep trying to catch everything.
Yeah. Well, the handout that we all got is also something to review, and a lot of those websites I like to go after the fact
Mhm.
and look up everything and see, oh, okay, you could do this or you could do that. Somebody else is asking if you are a member of DAR.
I am not. My mom is. And I helped her do the original research for her application, and I've done her 2 supplementals for her. So I've been around the block with it. I personally have not joined because I basically do everything that I would do as a member anyway, because I'm there all the time. Um, and that's not some I like, yeah. I say I spend 40 hours a week there. I don't need to spend any more time.
What does the application, what is it? What do you have to prove? What do you have to show?
Yeah. So it is a form that we have. It's 4 pages long. The first page is just you being like, "Hi, here's how to find me." The second page is your lineage page. It goes from you, the applicant, who's generation 1, back every single generation to your patriot, which is the Revolutionary War person, who either went out and tried to shoot someone, so they have military service, or they did civil service, so they served with the colonial government, or patriotic service, which is kind of a catch-all for like other stuff that supported the cause of revolution, or you're the signer of the Declaration of Independence, which that's a very discrete group that we can identify. Um, Page 3 is where you put all of your citations for that lineage, and page 4 is where you go through the um, military service or other service of your patriot. So basically, for your first 3 generations, so that's you, your parents, and your grandparents, you have to have complete dates and places for birth, death, if relevant, and ideally marriage. So, for instance, when my mom applied, she sent in her birth certificate to prove her full date and place of birth. She sent in my dad's birth certificate. She sent in their marriage certificate. You also have to have a link between each generation. So, something that proves that these people are someone's biological parents. So, for instance, my mom's birth certificate lists her parents. So, that was the link. Once you get past the 3rd generation, which is your grandparents, we would love if you had complete dates and places for those people as well. You should shoot for complete dates and places if you can, but we get that not everyone has records like that, especially depending on where in the country you're living. So from the 4th generation down to however far you have to go to get to your patriot, you have to still prove that parent link, parent-child link, but you just need one complete date and place for each individual in the lineage. So that's the line carrier and their spouse. And you have to prove essentially that they could have had the child. So some people will say, oh, but I have his birthday, so I'm done. And I'm like, cool, but you didn't prove he lived to 1820 to be the father of this child. So I need you to also prove that he was alive at least in 1820 to be the father of this child. So you can use circa dates, you can use post dates, things like that. So sometimes this is challenging depending on where your family lived. It can be challenging depending on if you are in a group that was not as well represented in records. But there's a lot of tricksy things you can do. I call it playing 4D chess. Sometimes, you have to kind of go out and come back in, but there's a lot of tricky things you can do even if you don't have like a birth certificate or a death certificate for someone. Um, so I wouldn't let that discourage you. If you think you're missing a vital record and you're like, oh God, I'm never going to make it, find your local chapter, talk to them. Each chapter has a registrar. Their whole job is helping people join and do their paperwork. You are absolutely not alone on this. There's a person in your area whose whole job is helping you.
And what's the processing time once the application is done?
So right now we usually try and keep applications at under 6 weeks turnaround. So from the day it hits data entry, who does like processing, to like the day that it goes back to data entry for end processing, we try and keep under 6 weeks. Right now it's the end of the year. So a lot of people, since we do our dues in November, a lot of people try and send in their application in October to get in like right under the dues deadline. So
Sounds
right
like
now we're at
people.
Yeah, so right now we're at a little bit above 6 weeks because obviously we're getting rushed by a lot of people and vacation and
Sure, sure.
everything. Um, Supplementals right now is at about 2 years turnaround. And
Wow.
that's because you can, once you're in, so you do your application to get in. And then if you just want to prove additional lineages, you can. And you don't have to do them one at a time, which is one of the reasons that it's slowed down because some women will send in 5 at once, 10 at once. And so that is a much larger queue. And so some of that is also chipping away at that. So there's kind of two piles.
Right.
One is scarier than the other, definitely.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for this very interesting and eye-opening presentation. I know I will be following up with a lot of these links just to familiarize myself so much more with this. And we've gotten a number of people saying wonderful program. Thank you. I want to thank you
You
for an amazing presentation. So that's always good to hear. So kudos to you, Olivia.
Thank you.
And we just want to thank you for presenting.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to meet all of you. And yeah, like I said, if anyone has any questions, email is always better because I work weird hours, but feel free to contact me and be as weird and specific as you want. I've stepped in a lot of family drama. I can do it again.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.